kindness, resilience, strength. These are the highlights of my story. But before we get there, we must face the truth. Human beings are capable of doing unspeakable things to one another. 17th century philosopher Blaise Pascal rightly noted about mankind, judge of all things, an imbecile worm, depository of truth and sewer of error and doubt, the glory and the refuse of the universe. There is a fascinating theory in evolutionary psychology called the Dunbar number. It suggests that humans can only maintain about 150 meaningful relationships at any given time. Our brains are simply not built to handle more. The theory breaks our social circles into layers, starting with just 5 people in the middle, our loved ones, followed by 15 very close friends, 50 good friends, 500 regular friends, 500 acquaintances, and up to 1,500 people that we can recognize by face or name. But beyond that, humanity starts to blur. We stop seeing individuals and start seeing a crowd, an abstract mass, a number. That's when empathy begins to fade and connection turns into a blob. It's not that we don't care, it's that we can't process that much humanity at once. I always thought of myself as a kind and empathetic individual. The global miseries of the world touch me deeply for a moment. And then life gets in the way and I forget about Syria, Palestine, Israel, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, and many other countries where my fellow humans suffer and die every day. Or I used to forget, until life put a comma and added one more name in that list, Ukraine, the country I was born in. When your own home country joins that list, everything changes. Every name becomes your own, every wound, every loss is felt on your own skin. And suddenly, Dunbar's theory stops working. You realize you're part of something bigger, something heavier, a collective grief, but also a deeper connection, a heartbeat of humanity that bleeds and loves as one. When the full-scale war in Ukraine broke out, something remarkable happened. People who had never experienced war before saw us not just a number beyond 1,500, not a distant conflict or a blur, but a fellow humans. They showed up all around the world, and I saw it here in Nova Scotia. But first, a little intro. In 2013, I arrived in Halifax with a suitcase, a broken heart, and no idea where I belonged. We had fled Crimea just before the invasion, living the home I loved, unsure if I will ever see it again. And I haven't seen it or my family ever since. Because returning has not been possible. People are scattered, places are occupied, the doors to home are locked by war. I was 32, a journalist, a nomad with no place to call home. And I found myself in a place where people didn't speak my language, didn't know my story, but cared anyway. They showed kindness not because of who I was, but because of who they were. And that kindness saved me many times over. And years later, it would ripple across the world. Before I went to Ukraine for the first time as a journalist during the war, a Canadian veteran friend of mine said, "You will need help with PTSD after that." I laughed. I told him, "I'm Ukrainian, we don't get PTSD, I'll be fine." And truthfully, I am fine now, but I understand the weight of his words, the invisible imprint of war, the way it changes your body, your dreams, your time. And I believe I'm fine because every time I come back from Ukraine, I return here to Nova Scotia, to this land and these people who don't just welcome you, they see what you carry. A neighbor with a plate of homemade cookies, a card from a stranger in your mailbox. The land itself helps you heal. In 2022, when the war escalated, thousands of Ukrainians fled to Canada. And once again, Halifax showed up. Haligonians opened their homes, their hearts, their hands. They offered not just shelter, but dignity, not just food, but hope. I found myself on both sides, grateful to receive this kindness. and driven to give it back. Aid missions began forming, supplies were gathered. My community here, my chosen family, was sending help somewhere where they'd never been, but felt connected to. Because when you live by the ocean, you understand the power of ripples. One of the places that received that aid was an agricultural city, Zaporizhia, the size of Halifax. I went there myself, delivering supplies. That's where I met Oleg, a farmer turned soldier. His call sign was Phoenix. He was the part of the National Guard, a man who had never wanted to fight but couldn't stand by while his home was being destroyed. We became close. I asked him once why he joined, why he left the quiet life to go to the front. And he looked at me and said, "Who, if not us?" As if the answer was obvious, as if turning away was not even an option. He told me once what he felt the first time he pulled the trigger. There is a rush, adrenaline. You feel strong until it haunts you. You dream of him. You see his face. You understand that he too had a mother. We are not meant to kill. We're meant to plant, to love, to build. Oleg was not meant to be a soldier. He worked with animals, cared for the earth, and loved a quiet dignity of farming. He would gently pick up worms and beetles from the road so they're not run over by a military vehicle. He rescued kittens from the trenches and gave them names. That was the kind of man he was. Kind, protective, steady. Even in the face of war, he believed in power symbols and words and flags. One day, we planted a Nova Scotia flag in the war-torn soil. That flag came from Halifax. He looked at me and said, "Tell them we remember. Tell them they are here with us." As I was writing this talk, Oleg was killed in action. And now I carry his memory like that flag, with both hands. His call sign was Phoenix. When he died, something broke in me. I remembered what my Canadian veteran friend told. PTSD is not just a diagnosis. It's a silent companion. It's a trigger button, the replay that never turns off. But I didn't spiral much. I didn't collapse. Why? Because my Nova Scotia community gave me something deeper than safety. It gave me structure, a belonging, and a place to land. And that's when I began to understand trauma in a very different way, not just through psychology, but through something much older. This perspective was introduced to me by a Mi'kmaq elder friend of mine here in Nova Scotia. We spoke about trauma, loss, war, and she said something profound. When trauma happens, a part of your soul steps outside of your body. It lives to survive. And I knew exactly what she was talking about. I remember being in a place where heavy battles had raged just a week before. The human remains have been taken away, but the land, it remembered. Scorched earth, twisted metal from blown up vehicles, and that smell, sweet and nauseating, of burned rubber, chemicals, and something else, something I can't even name. The smell that felt like suffering itself. What struck me most wasn't what I saw, but what I felt. The space around me felt like glass, as if the air itself could shatter into 1,000 sharp pieces just with the move of one hand. And time didn't move forward or backward. It was sticky, like molasses. My senses, my thoughts, my soul itself was stuck in that moment. The part of my spirit got scattered across that land. In many shamanic traditions around the world, that's exactly how trauma is understood. A soul loss, a splitting, a scattering. It's not just that something terrible happened, it's that something left you, a fragment, a sliver of spirit, a part that couldn't bear pain and wandered off. And healing? Healing is the journey of calling those pieces home. Not all at once, not in the straight line, but piece by piece, breath by breath, through memory, through ritual, through kindness. Sometimes it's not about fixing what's broken. Sometimes it's about gently gathering what was scattered, sitting with what we've been told to bury, and letting your soul remember. I believe every act of kindness is a form of soul retrieval. Every time someone held space for me back here in Nova Scotia, with a smile, a meal, or just a quiet presence, they were unknowingly returning a part of me that I thought I lost at war. I struggled with survivor's guilt. Why am I here eating homemade bread in Halifax when someone is hiding in the basement? Why am I safe when others aren't? Psychologists describe survivor's guilt as a type of trauma response, a heavy weight carried by those who survived. But in many shamanic traditions, survivor's guilt is understood as the soul's refusal to return fully into the body. A part of us stays behind, in the rubble, in the memories, in the moment we could not change. It's a kind of invisible soul tether. It took me long to understand that surviving is not a betrayal. It's a responsibility to witness, to speak, to live your life as if you're going to die tomorrow. Not just for yourself, but for those who can't. That truth came to me in the face of a little boy. His name is Nazar. He's 8 years old, with sun-kissed hair and wide brown eyes. He lives with his family just a few kilometers from the front lines. His school is gone, his playground is rubble, but every day he rides his little bike past the sandbags to see the soldiers, his heroes. They give him treats and call him the son of the unit, and he gives them joy and smiles and the reason to wait for tomorrow. Before I left Zaporizhia, Nazar climbed on my lap, took my face into his little hands, and said, "Promise you're gonna come back." And I did. I promised. Because your collective kindness taught me how. It taught me that resilience is not about how much you can endure. It's about how deeply you're willing to care. It's not about surviving. It's about helping others thrive. Kindness travels. It ripples. It moves from hand to hand, from heart to heart, until it becomes a structure strong enough to carry us all, strong enough to bring the lost pieces of our souls back home. This talk is for Phoenix. May his memory be a bridge between broken worlds, a reminder that even in war, hope is possible, because kindness is the architecture of peace, and only together we can rise from the ashes. And so I ask you, who, if not us? Thank you, Halifax.